Hey guys, another video for our Buying a House in Japan playlist. Some of you might remember this building that's at the rear of the farmhouse. Basically just 3 rooms. Was in reasonable condition when we got hold of it, didn't really need to have much done to it. It was full of junk, all the junk had to be removed, and then we just did some cleaning. And pretty much like you see it, it just gets used a couple of weeks a year, gets used by visitors coming from overseas. I'll stay in here for a couple of weeks, so I put a fridge in there so they can keep their beer cold and their milk cold, and a jug for water, and that's about it really. So we decided to make that, obviously used to be a closet, so we decided that we could do a bit more with that. So we got the unskilled labour on the job. First thing was to get rid of that shelf, because all that does, it's too high to be of use, and all it does is collect dust, and then every now and again deposit some dust down onto that shelf, so it's not achieving much at all. So first thing is to get rid of that shelf. That white wall you can see, we've showed you before, the white wall is reinforced with bamboo, and then it's basically packed mud that's then rendered. And we have to be really careful. You can see there, trying to be really careful, because you put, that pinch bar or that wood and push against that white wall, and it will leave a dent, and from the dent you then get a hole, and then the sand from the inside of the wall starts to come out and makes a real mess. So those walls are great for insulation, but you've got to be really careful with them, because once you damage them, then you have to spend a fair bit of time repairing them. They can be a real pain. So I have to treat those white walls with respect. So you don't really need to be hitting it with a big drill bit like that, having just said treat it with respect. But the plan was, we wanted to put water in here. We figured that if we could get running water in this room, that it would make it more pleasant for anybody that was staying in there. So the original plan was that on the other side of this wall there's a big storeroom, and the plan was to put a big water tank in there and run water into this room from the big water tank. So they've got cork there. One of the first things we want to do is to fill the gaps. So in those clay walls, what happens is over years they dry out, of course, they get drier and drier, and then between the wall itself and the wooden upright studs, you get cracks appear that get bigger and bigger as time goes on. So first thing we need to do is cork them up, because we're about to paint the whole thing white, and of course if you paint it all white you can't really see the cracks there now, but if we paint the whole wall white then you will see the cracks. Of course they'll stand out. So if you find yourself in Japan renovating a building, you're going to find you've got to compromise, because inevitably what happens is you have a plan, what you want to do, and then when you try and do it, quite often you can't get the things you need to get to do it. So we've put all these holes in here with the plan of running water in here from a tank next door. And then we had a bit of an idea of what we wanted. There's another hole there to take the wastewater away, put that in as well. There's that hole to the room next door. A bit more caulking went on down there to make it a bit more tidy. But what happens is you go off to find the bits, and in Japan everything comes in sets. I will just explain this first too. What you can see there, that's those little sliding doors there give you access to the armado. So on the outside we've got those storm shutters, and to put the storm shutters away you need to put one arm in there, in through that hole, to line the storm shutters up with the little runner that they run on. So we need to keep access to that, so we need to disguise it to make it look a bit better, because it doesn't look real good, does it? Usually of course it's hidden in a cupboard, so usually you don't see it, but now we've taken the cupboard doors off, you're going to see that, so we need to tidy that up. But yeah, inevitably what happens when you try and buy things, so in this case we went off to try and find a basin for this bench, and we had a bit of an idea of what we wanted. We wanted one that's big enough to do plates and cups, but also, to wash hands and things like that as well. And we found exactly what we wanted, but everything comes in a set. So nobody sort of goes and gets a tap and a basin and the pipes and builds anything. Everything's bought in a set. So you buy the set, and it has the cupboard with the basin on top of it, and has the mirror that goes on behind it, and the lights that are built in, and you end up with a set that's worth about $500–600, and you just can't get the bits. Even the tradesmen use kits like that. some of you might remember when we did the fly screens for the house, it was the same thing. You can't just buy the frame for the fly screen and buy the fly screen and then go and put it together and make the fly screens. You've got to buy these kits, and each kit's for a window, and each kit has all the corners, and it has the little rollers, and it has other bits and pieces with it too that you end up throwing away. So the other problem we're dealing with here too is these doors. These doors look fantastic when they're in good nick, but as they get older, the paper dries out and it gets really flaky, and when it gets extreme, it's like that one there, you've lost all the paper off the door altogether, which looks terrible, doesn't it? And really hard to fix, of course, because they've got pictures drawn on them. They've got scenes painted on them basically. And this door over here's got the same problem, and you can't repair that. You can't do much with that. The only thing to do is take all the paper off and get 2 new ones. But we remembered that in this storeroom there's a lot of doors that came out of the main house, and at the back of all the doors were these, and we aha, that's right, they were there. So we pulled them out and measured them up to see if they happened to be the right size, because quite often they are. They have sort of a standard size for these things, so it turns out yes, they were the standard size, which is fabulous, and they were in good condition, just a bit dusty, so that was exciting. So then the plan is to take those 4 out over there, put the other ones in that are in better condition, and take 2 of those and put them over there. So it's recycling, which is always good. So we need to run the wastewater pipe under the floor and out the back. There's an open drain out there that's really only supposed to have rainwater in it and run off, but we've got a good filter that we're going to put underneath the sink, and there's only really going to be, you know, the odd little bit of soap maybe and a bit of toothpaste, and that's about it going down there. So no harm done. Quite interesting down here, guys. Look at this. There's the posts that support the floor, and they're just on a rock, and that's really standard. The main house is the same. They just have one big rock and the wooden post, and because the benefit of that, of course, here is in an earthquake the whole house can move, nothing breaks because it just moves backwards and forwards on the rock. The other thing you'll notice too is that the timber is only dressed on the side that they need to attach to things. So in this case, those main beams above our head there are not dressed on 3 sides, so it just looks like a branch that's had one side dressed, one side smoothed off, and the other 3 sides just look like a branch. Looks like a piece of wood, looks like a tree, sort of rustic. You see up there, see, really rustic, just like branches of trees basically. So we drilled a few holes here, and that allowed us to get the saw into the bench, and then off we go, cutting out a square. So we ended up compromising, guys. The short story was, we've mentioned before with these old houses in Japan, from an investment point of view, you don't want to spend too much money, because when you come to resell it, it doesn't add to the value, because Japanese people don't want old houses. So probably if you sell an old house like this, chances are it's only going to get demolished anyway, and someone's going to build a new house there. So in some countries, if you spend money renovating a place, it'll add to the value. In Japan, it usually doesn't. So you've got to be really careful how much money you spend, because you're really throwing it away. You're really only spending the money to improve your quality of life while you're living there. So, which is good, of course, to spend money to improve your quality of life, but you've got to remember that you're not going to get the money back when you sell the place, so you've got to be really careful. So short story was, instead of spending $500 or $600 on the materials to do our plan A, which was to have a big water tank next door, we can't run pipes to this place from the rest of the house, because it would cost probably a couple of $1,000s, because it's so far, and you've got to cut trenches and all sorts of things. So that's what we wanted to do originally. That was our first plan, but it comes as a kit. The whole thing is one big kit for $500 or $600, and that tap is a high pressure tap, so you can't connect that to a water tank because it won't work. It just needs more pressure than that, more water pressure than that, and you can't buy it separately. And the whole thing, what we would have had to do is buy the whole thing, install the basin, throw the tap and the cupboard and the mirror and the lights all away, and then put a new tap on, which is just ridiculous. So we got this sink, which is actually made of plastic, and it's actually designed for outside, and it came on a cheap wire frame that we didn't have to throw away. It's almost always the case when you do home handyman and stuff. That's what we're talking about before, about the fly screens. In in Japan, you almost always end up throwing something away, because they always sell you a kit that includes things that you don't need. So in this case, it was the stand that basin was supposed to sit on, of course. So we've got that stand thrown away in the storeroom now, and hopefully we'll use it for something in the future. So we fitted that in there, siliconed around it, tidied it up a bit. So again, what we're trying to do is get the result that we want, which is to get running water in this room and spend as little as possible. So the budget ended up being probably under $200 in total by the time we're finished. So that first surface that we laid down there was actually flooring, because the stuff that they sell to go on benches is sort of like a big sticker, and it's not real good. You can scratch it really easily and it ends up looking crappy. They've got these heavy concrete bricks, as you can see they're pretty heavy. Nah, not really, they're just polystyrene. Silly man. So we just need to get the tank. There's a water tank coming. This was our compromise, right? Instead of having a 500 litre water tank in the next room, we've compromised and we've got an 80 litre water tank that we're just going to put up on the bench, which sort of sucks a little bit. Weren't real happy with that plan, but it was sort of a compromise. And the people who stay in this place, we only get people come maybe 2 or 3 weeks a year, so they'll be happy because they've got running water and they didn't have running water before. So we'll show you what we ended up with here. So we changed those doors around, brought those better doors in. Tatami's not in bad nick, it's pretty old, so you can see how brown it is. Usually new tatami's green, it gets brown as it gets older, so it's pretty old, that tatami, but it's in good condition. So look at that, isn't that pretty? The white you can see there's supposed to be like cloud, you know, mist. So that's pretty scene, isn't it? And if we open that door and step through to the other room, we've got a bed in this room because one of the people that stays with us is an older person who can't really sleep on the floor, or if they did, they wouldn't be able to get up again in the morning. So we've got to have a bed in there for that person that sits on special brackets so it doesn't damage the tatami. And there's the inside of that wall, isn't that nice? Look at the scene with the waterfall and the forest. Isn't that beautiful? So that's better, isn't it, than that crappy door that was there before. A little river, see the little river running through there? Isn't that beautiful? So very happy with that. Anytime we can get a good outcome like that for no cost, that cost us nothing to achieve that, just by using the doors that were stashed away in the storeroom. Happy with that. Put wax down on that wooden floor there to make it a bit sort of fresher. Put a curtain. The curtain's actually a sheet, guys. That was a $10 sheet from a cheap shop. Got the fridge, kettle, and got running water, all painted and clean and ready to go. Ready for some visitors. So it's a bit better, isn't it? A bit better than a dusty cupboard. And the room's looking a bit more interesting too. Happy with that? Hope somebody found that interesting. More videos coming soon.